hello to you in your studio and all your future guests. I'm Greg Barrett. My students and friends call me Moose, like the big animal. And I teach clarinet at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. I've been teaching there for 20 years. And I also coach chamber music classes. So that's most of what I do professionally. I'm a member still of the Ars Viva Symphony. We had our own classical season for many years, and our music director, Alan Hetherington, retired. And now we pretty much a for-hire orchestra performing with groups such as the Chicago Master Singers. So that's what I do.
Nice. Now, how did you get started on clarinet in the first place?
Sure. So before playing the clarinet, my father taught me to play the soprano recorder. I was probably first or second grade, maybe even first grade. And about third grade, we had a piano at our house. And the summer after third grade, our school district had a summer music recreation program, which I could join at the age of 9. And it was 3 hours every morning, Monday through Friday in the summer. And I began group clarinet lessons after my third grade. And I was pretty sure I wanted to play a woodwind instrument, orchestral woodwind. My father, as a boy, played the oboe and saxophone, but don't tell him, but he's completely tone deaf. He sings on one pitch. And I remember as a boy hearing his saxophone. I was maybe 2 or 3 years old, it's one of my earliest memories, and thinking it sounded hideous and running to the other end of the house. But anyway, my parents had a classical music recording collection. They had records, LPs, and I used to listen to some of those. And as I said, I wanted to play woodwind instrument that was in the orchestra. I was thinking either the oboe or the clarinet. And I asked my parents which instrument would have the most solos in the orchestra of those two. And they said probably the oboe. And I didn't want people to think that I thought too much of myself. I didn't want to be greedy. So I thought, okay, I'll play the clarinet. And me and a couple other buddies from school, we began that summer in group lessons. So that's how it started. And
here we are now.
Yeah, it was fun. But you know what I really liked? I liked the clarinet, but I liked the phys ed class in that summer program where we got to play dodgeball. I really liked playing dodgeball.
That's a perennial favorite at our martial arts dojo.
Okay.
It's so well that's neat. So you said you've been at Northern for 20 years now?
Right, yeah.
What are, if you don't mind me asking, what are some of your best days at work? Let's start with that. Is there anything that stands out?
Well, I think I always am thrilled when I feel like a student is really getting a concept or progressing to see advancement, achievement. Maybe I feel they're kind of buying into the whole idea of music, of a lot of practice, study, learning, listening, participating, that sort of thing. So when I see a student where they feel that music becomes more meaningful to them, I think that's always exciting. On the opposite side, those students who don't seem motivated to want to improve, I kind of scratch my head and I wonder, well, why are you doing this?
Right. That sounds a lot like actually what part of why I started this YouTube channel in the first place is over the years I've had my share of students. I think if you're a teacher, everyone loves that kind of aha moment where the idea makes sense. But I know I've had my share of students just they're on the hamster wheel and it doesn't seem like they want to go anywhere. Like I'm to a point, I guess I'll keep taking your family's money, but if this is not something you're interested in, it doesn't do me any good either. It's
Yeah.
kind of a personal drag at some point.
But I understand that, especially pre-college, or maybe it's not going to be a career. But if, even at NIU, I have students who are music minors, or they're taking secondary clarinet lessons. So I understand that it may not be a priority in their lives,
Right.
and that's okay. But just to feel like a student is putting into the lessons as much effort that I have, I want to make sure that they're putting in their fair share too.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it is a different world between university and other contexts. But
Right. I mean, just one thing about that. For instance, I didn't start college as a music major, so you never know if someone may switch to music or switch out. So I think teachers need to be kind of flexible, not to have any concrete expectations, but realize that life is always in flux for people, and different things may go one way or the other.
What did you start school as?
I was a chemistry major.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that that kind of mindset transferred over to music in a particular way?
I don't know. When I was growing up, from the ages of 10 through 18 through school, I always did a lot of things. I did my schoolwork, but I participated in music to the greatest extent that I could, and also some athletics. So I was always doing a bunch of different things. So I don't know if there's any connection really. Yeah. Music just seemed like, by the time I started my freshman year of college, it just seemed that music was a little more fun than calculus and stuff.
There you go. I can agree with that. No, I'm glad you put it that way. I know with over the years, some of my more serious students, they get really focused on getting good at their instrument or whatever. And I keep telling people, like, there's life outside the practice room. And, it's nice to, I went through that personal crisis myself. Like, oh, do I have to just do this one thing? Like, well, it's life. You're living life as a human being. Even if you're good at something or want to pursue something professionally, why limit yourself to just that one thing, or identifying yourself only as the one thing? So, but that's good. I'm glad you put it that way. What would you say are some really important core lessons? It could be about clarinet or just life in general, being a better person, whatever. Some core life lessons, you think?
Well, I don't know, maybe focusing more on clarinet, but I guess it relates to life. You want to really be in the present and be willing to explore on your own, I think, is the most important thing. You can't let a teacher, you can't expect a teacher to give you everything. You have to have your own inquisitive mind and keep searching, researching, learning, looking at new things. Be yourself. Everybody is different, specific interests, and but whatever you do, I would try to do it passionately, and then it's more interesting. I don't think you want to force yourself into being a clarinetist. And that's another, I guess, a life lesson. Be willing to change. Don't be high school senior and you're sure you want to be the next principal in the Chicago Symphony. Be willing to be flexible. You've got to let things just come and go. There's a lot of luck to life, and just be flexible, but be inquisitive. That's good.
Now, specifically for the clarinet, let's say you've had a number of students over the years in a university context. Yeah. Is there anything? I can't speak for everyone, but let's say for most of the students who have come into your studio, is there like a basic kind of clarinet pedagogy issue you've had to deal with all of us? Oh,
Well,
sorry for anyone just watching. I studied with Dr. Barrett as well. It's we agreed to. That's why part of why he agreed to speak with me. We know each other from that. So
right. Well, everybody is really different. And my students come in with a huge range of background. I have some students who've never had a private clarinet lesson in their lives. That's increasingly rare. Almost all my students have had some private study. But I've had students who've never had any private study. And I've had some who have played major youth orchestras, Milwaukee Symphony Youth Orchestra or Elgin Symphony Youth Orchestra, Chicago Symphony Youth Orchestra, et cetera. And they've had a lot of experience, a lot of training. So my first thing is I don't want to break anything that's already working.
right. That's good policy.
So, yeah, I mean everybody's ergonomics, their hands, their mouth, their embouchure, their teeth structure. Everybody is a little bit different, and everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. So I kind of do a mental rundown in my own mind. What are the important things, and I make sure that everybody's got a basic level. So even if somebody's company very accomplished, we still want to make sure their instrument's working okay, that their thumb rest is in a position which is best for them, their key heights and the way their keys are bent or angled on the clarinet is working for them. The reeds work for them, and we want to make sure that the embouchure is the best for them. There's so many variants in embouchures, but you want to help the student experiment to find what's going to probably be the best embouchure for them. So we go through those things, and then you work with air and how you move your hands, how much tension are in your hands and arms, and your tongue position in your mouth is hugely critical. So we go through all these things, and then you get into, once you're kind of beyond the physical, then you can really get into the more musical things.
There's the artistry of it.
Right, and just basic, you start maybe basic intonation and rhythm and then an interpretation and expression. So we kind of look at the whole gamut. I want to make sure that player hasn't really overlooked anything. Some players are really gifted physically. Their hands seem to just work very smoothly and naturally on the clarinet. So you don't want to mess with that.
Right.
But a lot of people, it helps them to learn that there are different ways you can move your fingers and your tongue.
Yeah, that's important. I know I've run into let's say my share of different teachers who it has to be their way or the highway. And like you said, physically we're just not the same. Yeah. So, but it's good. I really believe that as well. You have to be good at diagnosing and adjusting to the individual. But that's good.
And just one other thing related to that, I mean, my general sound concept is pretty middle of the road, but I want students to be aware that there's a range of sounds that are possible, but I want to make sure that everybody can kind of make standard classical sound to start with, and then, vary that as you want, but let's agree on some kind of basic middle ground.
Yeah. That's good. Who would you? I'm sure you've worked with a number of professionals over the years, studied with them, worked alongside them. Who do you consider to be some of your major influences?
Yeah, well, let me say, I think that in general, the best teachers are those who show belief in the student, that the psychological may be the most important.
Yeah.
As long as the teacher isn't guiding you down a wrong path in terms of musicality or physical aspects of playing, if you feel your teacher believes in you, boy, that sure helps. That said, I think I had good teachers. I didn't start taking private lessons till I was in 6th grade. And my teacher was a graduate of the Oberlin Conservatory, where George Wall was the teacher for years. And then my junior year of high school, I studied with the bass clarinetist from the Buffalo Philharmonic, Ed Yudzinski, and he had been a student at the Eastman School of Music. So again, it was a good teacher, and we got back to some real basics. And then I kind of fell into, I joined, I was a member of the Clarinet Studio at Northwestern University, where I started as a chemistry major. And of course there my main teacher was Clark Brody, recently retired principal from the Chicago Symphony, and also to some extent Robert Marcellus. So those were just two big influences. Especially Marcellus had such a reputation and a proper manner around him that as an 18-year-old, you kind of look at him as you know, the real God, and whatever he says must be right. He had a lot of credibility. So I would say he was a main teacher. And then after that, when I was 23, I went back to school, got a master's degree with Jim Pine when he was still in Buffalo before I went to the Ohio State. And again, he was an Eastman graduate, and besides being a mouthpiece maker, he really helped set me up with some musical and expressive ideas in the clarinet that maybe I hadn't been exposed to. So he was very helpful. And then I would say most of my learning after that, in my doctoral program at Indiana, a lot of it was just experiential through chamber music playing and playing in professional orchestras at that point.
Yeah, experience is a very important teacher as well.
Yeah, you just play as much as you can.
Now, your doctorate, what I guess what was your work on when you were doing your doctorate? Did you have a particular topic of focus you want to share?
Yeah, sure. Well, part of the degree requirements in Indiana are a series of recitals. You have to play recital your first semester just for official acceptance. And then there's 3 or 4 additional solo recitals you must do. I played a concerto, well, it was a duo concerto, the Strauss Duet Concertino for Clarinet Bassoon Orchestra with one of the school orchestras. And then at Indiana, you also have to write a document. They call that a document, not as large as a dissertation, but mine was still over 300 pages. And this was when I went back to school after playing professionally for a number of years in orchestras in Virginia, North Carolina. So I was 30 when I started my doctorate. I had already been working for 5 years. But anyway, I had developed an interest in music from Finland, which started with the music of Jean Sibelius. And I was always very interested in contemporary music. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, where Lucas Foss founded a Center for Creative Music in the 1960s, and Morgan Feldman, the famous composer, was there. Leger and Hiller, who wrote the first piece of computer-generated music, was in Buffalo. So I was always surrounded by contemporary music as a boy. Anyway, Finland, they really support their composers and performers. So I was enamored with music from Finland, and that became the subject for my dissertation, looking specifically at works by 3 prominent composers. And I also recorded works by them. I made a recording called The Finnish Clarinet, and it starts with contemporary works, but went back to a work by Krusell. And I worked with musicians from Finland, Australia, and in the United States, and making this recording. So I've always been interested in music from Finland.
Nice. Yeah, that's. Do you have a discography or some list of those things if people are interested and want to look it up? I can. Yeah, I think anything like that I can share. If you send it to me, I'll tack it onto the video so people can find more about it.
I think if they just Google my name and Gregory Barrett and Alba, ALBA CDs, that's a Finnish company which produced that recording. And then another friend of mine in Finland, Mikko Raasaka, he's a Finnish soloist and chamber musician. He invited me to co-commission a couple of extended works for 2 clarinets, and we recorded another CD for that same label, Alba, ALBA. And it's always rewarding working with composers, so I keep doing that.
There we go. Well, that kind of leads into my other question about repertoire that moves you. But that's good. So let's see. From here on, let's say you've done quite a bit with that. What do you have anything you have your sights on next? Any goals in the future you're working towards?
Well, I maybe you saw on a couple of days ago, I sent you some etudes that I just wrote.
Yes.
And these are 10 etudes that are helpful learning to play the Debussy Premier Rhapsody, one of our best pieces that's often played. But I think maybe a high school student or even a college student looking at this piece, there may be some unfamiliar harmonic ideas and a lot of quirky things in it. So I wrote a series of etudes to help learn this piece. And actually that ties in from an earlier project I did 5 to 10 years ago. I wrote a series of etudes. It's published by the French publisher Billaudot. It's called 24 Clarinet Etudes from the World. And it's an etude in every major minor key based on a folk song from around the world. So these days I'm not recording so much, but I've always enjoyed writing music since I was in high school. I find it's nice to put something down on paper and then you have it, as opposed to, we practice hours and hours and then it's gone, it disappears.
Yeah.
But I kind of like creating something. So that I'm doing. And I was scheduled to perform for the International Clarinet Association this summer, but of course that conference was canceled, but I'll do that again next summer. Do
you know where it's going to be? Do you know where the next one's going to be?
Yes, 2021 will be in Fort Worth, Texas.
I was kind of looking forward to this last one. It seemed like I might be able to make it, but there's no telling with life sometimes.
Right. And, that's a thing that wasn't so much available when I was a young player. These conferences and workshops, again, these are things that I think young players should do. You want to hear other people playing, then you start to get the idea of what's possible in the clarinet and the international standards. And, that's in addition to listening to recordings. Listen to your local classical radio station all the time. Just find out as much about music as you can.
Yeah. Nowadays there's such a wealth of resource available to people. It's it's really overwhelming, but that's good. Hopefully, barring any other surprises from the universe, maybe I'll see you at the next one.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Now, kind of veering back to the technical a little bit. I know you talked a bit about adjusting, making sure things work for a student, and kind of adjusting that equipment for them. Do you have any particular preferences or comments about equipment?
Yeah, I think most players, their preference it's often determined by their first clarinet. So maybe if they had a Selmer first, they kind of stay along those lines. My first wood clarinet was a Buffet Yvette Schaefer, which is kind of, like maybe it's like the E13 now or something like that.
Right.
And when I was growing up in the 70s, that in the United States, that was it still is, like, I suppose, the preeminent professional model. For years now, Rick Sayre has in Glen Ellyn has maintained my clarinets, and I always ask him, what he sees about different brands and models, and it still is that the buffets, they just seem to be made the best and go out of adjustment the least. So I stick with buffets, and I've changed models some. For years I used the R13 or a Festival, but now I play the Tosca because I like the tuning on the Tosca. It's a little bit lower pitch, and the C and the staff, it's not too sharp. So I'm looking for intonation on the clarinet, and also the way the holes and the keys fit my hands. So everybody has different proportions between their fingers, how long the second finger is compared to the fourth. And I wish my fourth fingers were longer. So some clarinets, I can barely reach that third hole. Yeah, so you just have to make sure your hand can fit the keys, the holes on the clarinet. So and I don't require my students to play any particular model. If the clarinet seals well, the pads seal, that's most of it. That's the most important thing, whatever brand you play.
I know that's especially for incoming university students. You're already spending quite a bit to go to school in the first place, and I know in some places for a teacher to just tell the student, like, up and go, spend several grand more because I want you to have a new instrument, that can be kind of a more intimidating expenditure. Yeah. If you can, I know for my studio it's a little different with the younger players, but I understand, people can be intimidated by the cost of a working instrument, let alone a good one, and try to save money where we can, but it has to work.
A mouthpiece is the most important part of your physical equipment, and mouthpiece and reeds. So if you need to make an improvement, if the clarinet already seals okay, spend even $50 on a mouthpiece can make a huge difference.
I know that's a common point for me in my younger players' world. You get the elementary school mouthpieces that have giant divots, or it looks like a biological warfare lab inside.
Like Brad Behn makes a mouthpiece, Behn. It's about $35 or so, and it's probably a huge improvement over any mouthpiece a player has. Yeah.
That's great. What mouthpiece do you have? Because I figure we're all clarinet nerds. Somebody's going to ask, I'm sure.
Yeah. What am I playing? Let me just Google it for a second. I'll tell you. Hold on. Let me find this. What am I playing? 1 second.
I know. We had talked earlier about evolving and developing as a clarinetist. I'm sure it's rare to just stick to one thing all the time now and forever.
And that's true. I've been practicing on one mouthpiece, but I've been performing on another. So years ago, I had custom mouthpieces from my teacher, Jim Pine, and then I wanted something a little more flexible, and I started playing on some Gigliotti P34s, but they were customized by Ever Matson, who's now dead. He was a craftsman in New Jersey. And I've been practicing those because right now I'm not performing so much, and I didn't want to wear out my mouthpiece. Frank, I'll have to get back to you about the mouthpiece I'm using. But, the Brad Behn mouthpieces, I have one of those. I need to have a little adjustment made to that in terms of the way it fits my mouth, my teeth. But the Brad Behn mouthpieces are really good. And I'll have to think about another mouthpiece that I've been using a lot.
Yeah. Anything like that that comes to mind afterwards?
Yeah.
You can just email me. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, or it'll probably come to my mind while we're thinking. But maybe this is kind of symptomatic of me that I'm not a real equipment person. I'm not constantly messing around and searching for stuff.
Yeah, I'm the same way anymore. I mean, I think my undergrad years especially, I was swimming around trying, going to the shows, trying out everything I could see, and now I feel kind of painfully unaware of what's out there. I need to reconnect with the industry some more and kind of see what's available now. But yeah, I mean, was it the main thing? I know we talked about it earlier, is that it works and that it fits, right?
Yeah, and I think it's surprising, but most mouthpieces, they're more similar than dissimilar. So yeah, you won't go too wrong.
Right. Let's see. I know this has been a relative goldmine, I think, for people who want to understand your perspective on clarinet. But do you have any other particular advice for student? Let's say for my world, the younger players maybe possibly looking into college for their instrument. Any advice you might have for that group?
About what equipment to play,
or just in general, like if a younger player is considering continuing education for clarinet?
Well, I think you want to start realizing how much the best players practice if you want to be competitive. So the best high school players could be practicing 2 to 3 hours a day. And I think you want to practice a variety of things. You shouldn't overlook scales, arpeggios, articulation exercises. You really need to have the basics, especially realizing your hand position and the habits you've gotten into on the instrument, how close you're keeping your pinky fingers to the keys, just how you move your fingers in general. It makes a huge difference. How close you're keeping your tongue to the reed while you play. So you need to really know all the keys as fluently as possible. And then I think besides technical things like that, you want to have some materials that you're looking at maybe for a week at a time. So etudes or some orchestral excerpts, you want to be exposed to new problems every week. You don't want to keep playing the same ILMEA etudes for months without doing anything else. You need new problems, probably to be motivated, but you need new things every week. And then you want to start looking at repertoire, concertos, sonatas, chamber music, and when you can, orchestral studies. So there are pieces in those different genres at every grade level, easy to hard. So just start looking across the spectrum at technical things, etudes, repertoire. Do some of each is my advice.
That's important. I know it's very, very much sounds like our my martial arts school, and having a diverse workout to keep you on your toes, and you don't fall into a rut. It sounds very much the same. Now let's say I don't know, university level on up. I know today, well, I mean, pandemic times, it's a little unusual in general, but let's say for the today's clarinetist who's looking at building a career, whatever that may be, do you have any thoughts or advice for that crowd?
Yeah. So I think increasingly you have to really have a lot of your own motivation. It depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a public school music teacher, that route is still extremely viable. So you'd want to get a music education degree and become the best musician you can. If you are want to be only a performer, that is much, much harder. And you'll probably also be a teacher. So, and then I think another idea that people like to do is to have your own private lesson studio. Maybe you're teaching also at a community school of music, or you're teaching in several high schools every week. So again, you just want to become the best teacher and player you can, understand the fundamentals of pedagogy, know different materials, different etude books and ideas that people can have. And then I suppose there's the idea of a clarinetist composer. You're somebody like, for instance, maybe the best example is like Eric Mandat, who did, still has a university career, but the idea of creating your own repertoire and advancing what the clarinet can do, and and traveling a fair amount. But I would say most people will need to do a combination of those things: teaching, performing, maybe writing music, writing books. Be open-minded, and also you may find that what's best for you is to work in the tech industry, but still play in a community orchestra. You never know.
Right. Yeah, that's good to hear. I know my own career has kind of played out like that. I've had my toes in nearly every aspect of the music world, to varying degrees of success. But I can personally attest, like, it's going to be some kind of patchwork that you build for yourself. I feel like too, a lot of the successful performers I've talked to, they may be just mainly, let's say, symphony orchestra or whatever. Like, they're still doing other things too, whether they need to for a paycheck or because they're very interested in it, but it's nice to reaffirm how the value of openness I feel so. I know the point in my development where I thought I had to just find an orchestra and be there forever. It felt so limiting to me at the time. And certainly now I feel like even this right now, the internet and putting out valuable learning content, it's such an open field now, with some imagination and hard work. All the talented people out there can fashion something good for themselves, I think.
Right. And I guess one other thought: if you want to be a university professor like me with a full-time appointment, in most cases you need to stay in school until you get a doctorate or go back to school. Not that it's a requirement. Usually at least a master's degree is required, but practically speaking, because of the competitiveness of most this type of university job, you need to get a doctorate.
Yeah. So still some value in those degrees. Just know what you're in for and what you want to do.
Right.
But that's good. Now, what else do you do? I know clarinet is a big part of your professional life. Outside of clarinet, what are some of your interests or activities you enjoy?
Yeah, probably mostly sports. I've been a bicycle racer many years, and a swimmer. I train swimming and cycling, bicycling. So that's probably most of my free time, I do that sort of thing. I like to travel when we don't have COVID.
Right.
So that's one of the great things about music. You can work with musicians around the world, and organizations like the International Clarinet Association, they foster that. So I enjoy traveling and performing my own works or chamber music concerts, solos, or just giving master classes or judging international competitions. I find that very rewarding. I've had members of the Vienna Philharmonic even perform one of my arrangements in Vienna. So that's always rewarding to be involved in something like that.
Yes. I like that concept of not just being a tourist, but putting value in to the places you go. It's
right. And it's much more interesting to visit another city if you know somebody, if you meet somebody there. And so, that's
a different level of knowing a place when you're connected personally.
It's much more meaningful. Yeah.
Nice. Now, you mentioned some of your own resources you've produced, your recordings and your etudes and things. Are there any other media books or media resources you want to mention, or like maybe something else you produced, or let's say another resource from anywhere else that you think is high value?
Oh, well, I've had several other works published by my French publisher Billaudot. Those 24 clarinet etudes from the world. They've also published a clarinet trio I wrote that's a takeoff on Franz Schubert's The Shepherd on the Rock. I made a kind of a rock and roll version of that for 3 clarinets, and
Nice.
they're about to release a clarinet trio that I wrote, a klezmer style clarinet trio that should be out. And most clarinetists at some point, they become fans of Carl Nielsen through his 1928 clarinet concerto.
Mm-hmm.
And I've published an arrangement for clarinet and piano through a Danish publisher, Hansen, of his Chaconne. It was originally a piano work. And perhaps the work of mine that gets performed the most around the world is my arrangement of Jean Sibelius's End Saga, the orchestral piece. I've made a End Saga septet, and it's published by the oldest German publisher, Breikhoff and Hertel, and it gets performed all over the world by great groups. So those are my own things. And then beyond that, for students, there's such a great range of materials. So the kind of from the younger age on the way up, after players and playing for a couple of years, using the David Hite Melodious Progressive Studies Book 1 is helpful. Using scale books, Baermann Volumes 2 and 3 are helpful. All the Rose Etudes and such. The other thing I want to mention, my activities, I'm the editor of music reviews for the Clarinet magazine of the International Clarinet Association. So I look at music from all around the world, and there's so much music, you'll never run out of new pieces to play. So I would say, use your library, get all the etudes they have, get all the solo pieces, and just keep experimenting.
Nice. There's plenty out there. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, as far as your personal time, do you have any books or media shows, movies that you're enjoying right now? Just
yeah, at NIU we have a really developed world music program and jazz program, and the world music program is one of the reasons I wrote those 24 etudes from the world, to really embrace music of every culture. And likewise, I only have limited knowledge of jazz. Yeah, I played saxophone in my high school jazz ensemble and so forth. but right now I'm reading a book. It's thick. It must be 600 or 700 pages long, called Thinking in Jazz by Paul
Hmm.
Berliner. And this is partly realizing that we're in this moment of more racial awareness, and I want to understand jazz musicians, especially Black African-American musicians, and their musical background and processes. So I want to learn more about other types of musicians than just classical musicians, and how they think and how they learn, and to see how I can integrate those ideas into my own teaching and work.
Nice.
But it's called Thinking in Jazz by Paul Berliner. Great book.
I'll add that to the links. And the last few are a little out there, but yeah, I think they're interesting. What's something that you used to believe that you don't believe anymore? It doesn't have to be anything too controversial, just, anything that comes to mind you feel like sharing.
Yeah, since you shared this list of questions with me in advance, I've been thinking about that, and I've had a hard time coming up with an answer. I suppose because I've always tried to be kind of open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
In general. Maybe the only thing is I don't believe there's just one way to do anything. And maybe at some point I thought there was, but yeah. So I don't know. I have to keep searching my soul, but I'm not sure. You probably have to ask my mother or father if there's something I believed when I was 8 years old. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess perspective is important too. But
yeah,
no, that's a good idea. I mean, I know my own upbringing. There's all sorts of things where I was led to believe you have to do it this way or that, and certainly now there's it's definitely true that for most things there's many paths to the same goal. So.
Yeah, maybe the one clarinet thing that I have evolved in my thinking about is about vibrato on the clarinet. So when I was a student at Northwestern University, it was always kind of a joke that Robert Marcels would say, Greg, did I hear a hint of vibrato in your tone? It was something which was kind of anathema, which we shouldn't do at all. So I think for years I thought, oh, clarinet should have no vibrato ever. But I soon realized after leaving my undergraduate school that wasn't the case. So maybe that's one thing. I have a more flexible approach to what sounds are good sound on the clarinet.
There we go.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can think of I didn't ask you that maybe I should have?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't want to presume that this will be our first and only encounter this way.
Sure. So, let me just say that music is a big field. It's a big idea. And I think in one way or the other, it can enrich everyone's life. It doesn't have to be your occupation. But I think that anything that you do, which you're being thoughtful and applying yourself, I think it's rewarding. It's nice. I mentioned my involvement in athletics, and music is in some ways like athletics. You put in a little bit of training on a consistent basis, and you see some results come from that. So I think that's kind of a human thing to want to feel like you're learning new things, improving, and music can be a lifelong thing like that. And don't just limit yourself to the clarinet, but learn to play the piano or sing and look at different musics. And I think you'll never run out of interesting things to experiment with.
That's good. Now I know you sent me your most recent etudes on the WC. Is there anything else you're currently working on that you want to mention?
No, except I guess in some ways, yes. As a university professor, you can competitively apply every 7 years for a sabbatical leave. And I've done this twice before. I've looked at music from Denmark and music from Sweden. And what I currently working on is simply the proposal for sabbatical leave. A year ago, I went to Helsinki, Finland, and I looked at manuscripts at the library at the university there. They're not available online. And these are sketches, things in the handwriting of Jean Sibelius, his orchestral works. And so it's curious, it's interesting to see changes he made, the woodwind parts and his orchestral pieces. So hopefully I'll get this application done in the next couple of weeks, and then it goes through every level of university committee, and then maybe next spring I'll find out that I'll have a sabbatical leave, and so in spring of 2022 I'll hopefully be spending some more time in Finland, looking at more scores and talking to musicians there. So that's kind of the life of a university professor. You're looking several years down the road for future projects, whether they're performances or a research project.
That's good. I think that's important. I think for any field to stay interested, but and you probably catch up on some sauna time too, I imagine.
Yes, the sauna is nice. I've never done the plunge into the icy lake afterward. I've been in cold water, maybe 48 degrees, but not the 32-degree water.
Well, hopefully that works out so that you can at least get the chance if you want. Jump into ice water.
By the way, of course, I remember the name of the mouthpiece maker whose mouthpieces I use quite a bit. He's based in London. I think he's still in London. His name is Ramón Wodkowski. Wodkowski. Ramón Wodkowski, and he's was a Northwestern graduate, but he's played with all the London orchestras, and he really understands the physics of the mouthpieces. So Wodkowski and Brad Behn, those are the two mouthpiece makers who seem to work best for me. But let me just add a caveat. That's only because, many makers for years were using the Zinnerblank mouthpieces, which are no longer available. And just because of my own particular overbite, I thought those mouthpieces might work for me, but they just weren't comfortable to play. So again, you have to experiment. And if you're around Chicago, I would certainly check out mouthpieces by Walter Grabner, Grabner's Clarinet Xpress. He's always got new stuff cooking. He's got his own materials, I think. So it's nice to be able to visit somebody and have them kind of diagnose what might work best for you. So go see Walter Grabner if you're in Chicago.
Sounds good. I'll comb through all this and get all the contact information and links up for our hopefully growing audience. I know I see a lot of value in this. It's nice to talk to you again after a while. I know life is life is life, and we don't always get time, but it's nice to speak with you again. Hopefully the universe lets up a bit and we can connect again in person.
Sure.
But I appreciate you taking the time. Again, we're speaking with Dr. Greg Barrett, Moose.
Yes,
you can, if you're looking to connect with him, he's over at Northern Illinois University, and any other mode of contact, we can put it up in the show notes. But thank you again for your time. I'll release you to the wilds of DeKalb now, or wherever you are.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks, Frank. And it's great catching up with you. And this sounds like a great project. And good luck with your studio and all your teaching and performing and other work.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll talk soon. I hope.
Nice to see you.
Take care.
Okay. Signing off.